have provided the face-to-face students with a little extra coaching, if you want to call it that, today, and so I wanted to pass along similar information to you guys that are doing this from a distance. Um, so what do we put in the financial part? Let me start here first, though, that make sure you go to the content section, okay, of D2L, and go to Project 2, and you'll see I've got the rubric there. It's called Rubric with Calculator, I believe. Okay, and the second tab, down below the second tab, look at that, and that's going to give you an idea how this is graded. Okay, and you'll see that a big emphasis is on the financial section, 40%. That's not to say that you can slough off on the other parts, because even your organization's worth 15%, and other sections then are worth certain amounts, and I don't remember. I don't have it here in front of me. I should have brought that up, but. So take a look at that so you know how much emphasis I'm putting on the financial part. And then what I told the class today was, I know that I've oftentimes said, I want you looking for things that kind of jump out or stand out maybe about your particular company. Okay, and then research and figure out what those things are and what happened and why it happened and those types of things. But that said, okay, it's okay. In fact, I fully expect, it's not just okay, I fully expect that you're going to write just about some of the basics of your company. And I picked a company here that nobody in class has chosen. I just picked it. It's kind of a smaller company. It's a little broader based, maybe. In other words, it's kind of a conglomerate. It's a small conglomerate, meaning that it has all kinds of related stuff, but it's all in the household and personal care products, right? So it's Arm & Hammer, OxyClean, and First Response, and a few others. So it's kind of in this consumer products and home products types of industry. So it's good enough. It's a good company to analyze, and it's small. Okay, so when I say the regular stuff, what do I mean? Well, it's okay, or you should again tell me about, how has its revenue growth been? Okay, and it's one thing to tell me. It's another thing to look up in the annual reports and see what's management say about that. Is it happy with that revenue growth? It's kind of a nice continuing trend. It's not bang it, but it's pretty good. 10%, a little less than 10%, a little less than 10%. That's still, that's some decent growth. And how about gross profit and those things? Well, sometimes I got to flip this. It's a little easier because I want to see what its cost of revenue or cost of goods sold. Nothing there probably to report on. It's stayed pretty consistent, and likewise its gross profit. How about sales expenses? Well, they've actually dropped those by a couple percent. That's actually pretty impressive for a company, this size. And so, I toggle back and forth oftentimes between the dollars and the percents, because in some cases, looking at the dollar amounts for these total operating expenses and relative to the revenue, it's hard for me to do that math in my head, but I can toggle here in Morningstar. Okay, and again, what's management say about that? Okay, is this something that they're concentrating on? Is this something that's really a part of their strategy or their tactics, is to try to maximize then their operating income? Okay, it's gone from 17.92, so that's a double good thing. And what do I mean by that? Its revenue's been increasing at a reasonably good percent, and its operating income has been increasing at a greater percent because they've been able to drive their operating expenses down a little bit. Okay, odds are they're keeping their operating expenses similar in terms of dollar figures, or it's just not growing as fast as is their revenue, right? So even though their operating expenses are growing, they're not growing as fast as revenue. That's a great sign. I sure glance at these things. Interest expense, well, that's not a big number. Okay, to have less than 1% interest expense is not a big number. Means they probably have a little bit of debt, but not very much. Okay. Other income and expenses. I might want to look at this. They got this expense here. They went from other income here to another expense, right? Okay. I don't want to belabor this or spend all day, my day kind of, or your day too, analyzing this company. But those are things that I look at, sure, and that I want to talk about. I want to talk about this net income's increased from 11.26 up to 12.09. And then I come down here. I need to comment on earnings per share. Nice growth there. Okay. Here's one, okay, that some of you may or may not have. It may or may not be an issue with your company, but look at this, 286. That'd be million shares outstanding, and now there's only 262. Actually, the trailing 12 months down to less than 260 million. So this company is buying back stock. Okay, so now I got a triple good. I got revenues growing. Okay, cost of goods sold are staying about the same, but operating expenses are decreasing as a percent. And shares outstanding are decreasing, which should mean that my earnings per share are growing at a faster pace than even my revenue. Probably substantially faster pace than my revenue. And that's a really, really good thing. Okay? That's a really, really good thing. So you got a little company here that's just doing a lot of things kind of correctly. That's nice. Okay? Nothing jumps out at me, and I've said that some of your companies, nothing really is going to jump out at you that I could report. All I can report's on solid stuff here with this company. I look at the balance sheet, and by the way, I'd probably organize my paper this way. Well, let's take a look at the income statement. Let's take a look at the balance sheet. And I might differ the order, depending on what was more important or not. Okay. Now I might want to look at this one in dollars. Might want to look at it in percents too, but in dollars is kind of nice. So I got cash. Yeah, cash has dropped down here a little bit lately. It hit a high part there, and as have current assets in a similar sense. And so, yeah, we might want to take a look at that and see what's going on there with current assets, why they're kind of depleting a little bit. Gross property and plant, nothing really going on there. Accumulated depreciation, just kind of what I would expect. Yeah, again, this is kind of a boring company, so it may be a little tougher for me to find things that jump out, and so I may have to just kind of report on the norm, right? And how good and how well they're doing. This is a company that has, as we'll see when we get down, almost no debt probably, because remember their interest expense was almost nothing. Goodwill, I might take a look at that because it took a pretty good jump here. I might want to go take a look and see what happened with Goodwill. Goodwill, I get asked about, what is that? Well, it's usually if they've made a purchase, say, of another company, it would be typically, there may be some other ways that this gets booked, but this is the way I'm most familiar. If they purchased another company, it's the difference between what they pay for the company, the market value of the company, and what the actual book value of the assets are, the book value that the company had on the books. And that gets booked then as goodwill. Okay, and then over time they can have impairment of goodwill and on. Okay, I might have to take a look at this. Look at that big jump. So I said there wasn't anything in particular, but I'm gonna have to go back and look at the 2012 annual report, because look at that intangible assets. Look at that huge jump. I booked not only an extra 400 million or 350 million in goodwill, but I booked $1 billion in intangible assets. Well, what's intangible assets? Probably the value of trademarks and those types of things. I'm guessing there was a transaction that happened here that Church & Dwight bought another company and thus booked some goodwill as a result of that purchase, and then also booked intangible assets. Okay. On the other hand, their other long-term assets decreased. I might have to take a look at that and see what happens. So 2012 is going to be an important year that I may have to kind of take a look at. And I would guess that maybe this short-term debt and also this increase in long-term debt here, okay, were as a result of whatever happened here too, right? That they were willing to take on a little bit of debt, okay, and that they've sustained that debt now. It's kind of a big increase, and they've kind of sustained it, kind of picked up even a little bit of short-term debt here. It's certainly not a lot of debt, given the size of the company. Even on a book value basis, total assets, book value, 4.4 billion, total debt, 2.2. That's not a lot. And if you looked at their market cap versus the amount of debt, it's really nothing. Okay. So I know I'm kind of babbling on because I could do that all day. You know, I could look at a company here all day and kind of analyze it. I know that's sick that I could actually do that for fun and kind of enjoy it, but I can, you know, and see what's going on. But I hope that gives you some insight into some of the things that I would look for. Okay, now I spend a lot of time here when I'm showing you guys this, but like I said, what jumps out, and I'm going to look at the most recent, the 2015 annual report for sure. Okay, I'm going to look at that for absolutely sure. Okay, and then in this case, I'm going to look at the 2012 for sure because there's some extraordinary things that did happen here, and I want to report on those because they're kind of extraordinary. And that may be, you know, so I may have income statement, I may have balance sheet, I may have, you know, extraordinary items. Call it the other paragraph or other section under the financials, whatever you want. Okay, you could call it extraordinary items, that's fine. Okay, but I've given you a pretty good list. Again, you know, debts. Ooh. You know, we had a big jump there. You know, this could also happen, all of it underneath the balance sheet, because you obviously we're seeing some things here with debts jumping up, you know, intangible assets jumping up, goodwill jumping up, gross property and plant, you know, kind of increasing a little bit. Okay. Meanwhile, other long-term assets decreased. They might have sold off. That wouldn't surprise me if they sold off some other investments that they had, maybe to also finance this along with some debt. But I'm speculating here, and speculation isn't going to cut it in my paper. I got to look that up, right? And those are the things that I want to emphasize for you, is to look those things up. This is the repurchase of stock, is what's going on here. Okay. Just kind of so you know, I'd report on that. Cash flow, I'm probably going to see some of the same things I just saw in the balance sheet. I don't know that I would necessarily need a special segment for that. You know, unless unless something jumped out at me in particular. Okay, so I would definitely scan it and see if there's anything that really jumps out that's really out of the ordinary. You know, here the acquisitions net, and that's that 2012 year, right? So we're pretty sure that something happened there, right? And so I'd have to take a look at that. And you know, it looks like they acquire things all along, but these are probably small, you know, maybe little companies or whatever that are tuck-in transactions. Okay, so I hope that gives you a better idea. Again, you know, for me to try to limit that to 3 pages, say I want the whole report to be 5 pages, but try to limit the financial part to 3 pages would be almost impossible. I mean, I'd need 20 pages probably if the way I rattle on about these things. Okay, but set it up kind of like that and get into detail. Okay, and then research it and tell me what management thinks about it. Tell me what analysts think about it. Tell me what the news says about it, if there's news items and those types of things, right, that correspond with those types of changes that are taking place in the financial statements. I hope that helps, and good luck.